In this video, we're going to learn how to enable a specific method in our REST controller to accept cross-origin HTTP request. So I'll go back to my Spring Tool Suite, and this is the method that I'm going to work with. This method accepts HTTP GET request, and the path of this method is /email verification. To enable this method to respond back to HTTP request that was sent from a different domain or a different origin, I will use a special annotation which is called add cross origin, and I will need to import this annotation. Import cross origin from org Spring Framework web bind annotation, and using this annotation we can specify to which origins we will allow this method to send back an HTTP response. For example, if I want to specify that all origins are allowed, I will use origins equals and then quotes and asterisks like this. So if I run this application now, this web service endpoint will be able to respond to all AJAX HTTP requests sent from any origin, from any domain. So let me save this and let me run this application and see if our HTTP request will work. So I will select my project and then run this as a Spring Boot app. Open up console, see when the project started. Okay, it has started. Now I'll go back to my browser window and I will repeat this HTTP request and I'll see if the error will be gone. So I'll refresh it, and here we go. I did have a breakpoint set in my email verification HTML, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So let me remove the breakpoint and resume debugger. So I'll click on this button here and I will switch to network tab. This is the request and it has a summary, and we see that HTTP status is now 200. Now I'll go back to resources, and this is where I can view the source code of my HTML page. I will select it here on the left panel, email verification HTML, and this is the JavaScript that is being executed to send this HTTP request. So in this AJAX function, when it's done, so I can put a breakpoint here by clicking on this left side panel that has line numbers, and if HTTP request is successful and we get back a response, this breakpoint will trigger. So if I refresh my browser window now, I should get this breakpoint triggered, which confirms that I was able to get HTTP response back. Okay, so let's resume this and let's go back to our Spring Tool Suite. Now, if we wanted to allow a specific origin, for example, we don't want an HTTP request to be sent from any domain name, from any origin. We want to specify only one specific that we trust. To do that, instead of asterisks, I will provide an origin that I trust. So I will copy localhost port number 8080. I'll paste it here, and I know that my project, which I started in NetBeans, is running on port 8084. So I will use that port instead of 8080, like this. So now if I send HTTP request from a localhost port number 8080, this method should be allowed to respond back with HTTP response. Okay, so let me restart my application and see if it works. So I will run it as Spring Boot app. Let me check if it started. It has started, and I will go back to my browser window and I will repeat my HTTP request. And here we go. I was able to receive a response which confirms that everything is working. Let me resume debugging and change the port number to a different one and see if it still works. So I will change from 8084 to 8083, save this, and I will restart my application. Check if it has started. Okay, and I'll go back to the browser window and I will repeat this HTTP request. And we no longer get our breakpoint triggered, and if I go to the network tab, I see that the request has failed. And if I switch to preview tab, I'll get a reason: failed to load resource from origin 8084 is not allowed by access control allow origin. So this origin, HTTP localhost at port number 8084, is not allowed to communicate with our RESTful web service endpoint, because in this annotation here, cross origin, we have allowed requests coming from port 8083 only. Now, if we want to allow HTTP requests to come from 2 or 3 different origins, we can also do that. To provide multiple origins, we can use curly brackets, and then inside of this curly brackets, we can provide multiple values, but we have to separate them with comma, like this. So I can allow requests to come from port 8083 or port 8084. And if I do that, my RESTful web service endpoint will be allowed to communicate with these 2 origins. So let me restart my application and try again. Okay, it has started. I will switch back to Safari browser and refresh my page. And this time it worked. Okay, so let's resume it and go back to our Spring Tool Suite. Now, we used cross-origin annotation above the specific method, which means that only HTTP GET requests sent to this path will be allowed. But if we want to enable HTTP requests sent to all methods in this REST controller, then we can use cross-origin annotation and put it above the class. So I'll remove it from here, and then I'll scroll up to the class at the top here, and I will paste it right above the class here. This will enable all methods defined in this REST controller to receive HTTP requests from the origins specified here and respond back with HTTP response. So this method that receives HTTP GET request, this method that receives HTTP POST request, and this method that receives HTTP PUT request, all of these methods that defined in our REST controller will be able to receive HTTP requests coming from these 2 origins, and most importantly, they will be able to send back a response. Okay, so let's save this and let's try and see if it's still working. So I will restart my application, open up the console, start it, and I'll switch to the browser and refresh it. And here we go, it worked. Okay, so let's resume it, and now we know how to enable cross-origin HTTP requests that are sent to a specific method, and we know how to enable all the methods in our REST controller respond back to asynchronous JavaScript HTTP requests coming from different origins. Okay, so let's continue.